The dinner was at my in-laws' house. My wife's family. Her father, her uncles, her brothers. I was the only one without their last name. I was used to that. What I was not used to was being discussed like a rental agreement. I walked in from the kitchen. Her father was speaking to his brother. He said, "This is my daughter's husband, but he is temporary. You know how these things go." He thought I was still in the kitchen. I was not. I heard every word. I stood there with a bowl of salad in my hands, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a cold recognition. I was not family to him. I was a visitor. Someone passing through. Someone who would eventually be replaced. I did not say anything. I walked into the dining room. I set the salad down. I sat next to my wife. I ate dinner. I laughed at jokes I did not find funny. I helped with dishes. I kissed everyone goodbye. And then I started watching. Not confronting. Not asking questions. Just watching. I paid attention to the way he looked at me. The way he talked about the future. The way he never included my name when he talked about who would inherit what. It took me 6 months to understand what he meant by temporary. It was not about me leaving his daughter. It was about something else entirely. Something he had been hiding. And the word temporary was the only warning he was ever going to give me. Robert never liked me. I knew that from the beginning. He did not say it out loud. He was too polite for that. Too controlled. He just showed it. The way he looked past me when I spoke, like I was standing slightly to the left of where his eyes wanted to land. The way he changed the subject when I entered the room, steering conversations back to people he actually wanted to talk to. The way he asked about my job, like it was a phase I would eventually grow out of. I told myself he was just protective of his daughter. That was the generous reading. The generous reading was a lie. The truth was he did not think I was good enough. And he was not subtle about it. My wife, Elena, said he was like that with everyone. That was not true. I watched him with her brothers' wives. He hugged them. He remembered their birthdays. He asked about their parents by name. He made them feel like they belonged. I got nothing. No warmth. No curiosity. No effort. Just tolerance. Barely that. I was a guest in his house. A guest who had been there for 4 years and was still waiting for a welcome. I asked Elena once if her father had ever approved of anyone she dated. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said he approved of the first one. She said that was the problem. I asked what happened to the first one. She said nothing. He just set the bar too high. No one else has cleared it. I laughed, but I did not mean it. I wondered what made the first one so special. What did he have that I did not? A better job, a better last name, a better story. I did not know. But I could tell Robert was comparing me to someone I would never meet. Someone who existed only in his memory. Someone who had left a shadow so long that no one else could stand in the light. I was not competing with another man. I was competing with a ghost. And I was losing. I did not tell Elena what I heard at the dinner. I should have. My wife deserved to know that her father introduced me to his brother as temporary. But I was embarrassed. Ashamed that her father saw me that way. Ashamed that a part of me believed he might be right. What if I was temporary? What if I was not good enough? What if she would eventually figure that out and leave me for someone who cleared the bar? I kept the word to myself. I carried it like a stone in my pocket. I started paying attention differently. Not to how Robert treated me, to how he talked about me when he thought I was not listening. At a birthday party for one of Elena's cousins, I heard him say to Frank she will figure it out eventually. Frank asked figure what out. Robert said that she married down. Just like that. 3 words. She married down. Frank did not respond. He looked at me across the room. He knew I had heard. He did not say anything. He just looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have been warning. Frank found me later by the drinks table. He said Robert has a way of speaking that is not about you. I asked what it was about. He said, that is not my story to tell. I asked if Robert had always been like this. Frank was quiet for a second. Then he said no. He said Robert changed after the accident. I asked what accident. Frank walked away. He just turned and walked back into the party like he had not just dropped a stone into still water. I stood there holding a drink I did not want and watched him disappear into the crowd. That was the first time I realized Robert's cruelty might have a source. Not an excuse, but a source. Something had happened to him, something his family did not talk about. And whatever it had made him into a man who introduced his son-in-law as temporary. I did not know what the accident was, but I was going to find out. I asked Elena about the accident. We were in bed. The lights were off. I could not see her face. That was probably why I was brave enough to ask. She went still beside me, the kind of still that happens when someone is deciding whether to tell the truth or tell a lie. She asked who told me. I said Frank mentioned it. She said Frank talks too much. I asked what happened. She said a long time ago, before she was born. I asked why it mattered now. She said my father lost someone. He never got over it. That is all you need to know. I asked if it was a child. The room was dark. I heard her breathing change. She said my brother. Her parents had a son before her. He died. He was 8 years old. I asked how. She said a car. Her father was driving. I sat in the dark with that information. Robert had killed his own son, a boy named Matthew who would have been in his 40s now. A boy who died because his father was behind the wheel. I had been walking into that man's house for 4 years, expecting warmth, expecting to be welcomed, expecting to be treated like family. And all along he was carrying a wound so deep that he could not see anything else. Not me, not his daughter, not the life he still had, just the one he had taken. I asked why no one told me. Elena said, because it was not my business. It was not anyone's business. It was his wound. He carried it alone. I said he carries it by calling me temporary. Elena started crying. She said she knew. She said she knew her father was cruel. She knew he pushed people away. She knew he compared everyone to a ghost who could never disappoint him because he was already dead. She had been watching it her whole life, and she had never told me because she did not know how to say the words. My father killed my brother. My father has been grieving for 40 years. My father will never love you because he does not know how to love anyone anymore. I held her in the dark, and I did not say anything. I just held her. I did not know how to forgive Robert for his cruelty. But I was starting to understand that the cruelty was not about me. It was grief with nowhere else to go, and grief that did not listen to reason. It just sat in the driver's seat and waited for the next crash. I started watching Robert differently after that. His distance was not disdain. It was fear. He had lost one child. He had been driving the car when it happened. He had spent 40 years replaying that moment, asking himself what he could have done differently, wondering if he could have saved his son by turning left instead of right or braking 1 second sooner. And now he had a daughter who had chosen someone he did not pick for her, someone he did not control, someone who could take her away, not to death, to marriage, to a life that did not center around him. Every time I got closer to Elena, he saw me as a threat, not because I was temporary, because he believed everything was temporary, including children, including himself. I tried to talk to him alone. I found him in his study one night after everyone else had gone to bed. He was sitting in his chair with a glass of whiskey and no light on. I stood in the doorway, and I said I knew about his son. He looked at me. His face did not change. He said that was 40 years ago. I said it did not feel like 40 years. Not to him. He did not deny it. He just sat there with his glass in his hand and his eyes on the wall. He asked what I wanted. I said I wanted him to stop calling me temporary. I said I was not his son. I was not leaving his daughter. But he was making it very hard for me to want to stay. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said I did not know what I was talking about. I said he was right. I did not know, because no one would tell me. No one would tell me what happened that day. No one would tell me what he was thinking. No one would tell me how a man survives driving a car that kills his own child. He looked at his whiskey. He did not answer. I stood in the doorway and I waited. The silence was louder than anything he could have said. I realized then that the word temporary was never about me. It was Robert's confession about how he saw the world. Everything was temporary. Love was temporary. Children were temporary. Safety was a lie. He had learned that lesson at 8 years old in the passenger seat of a car that should have protected him and did not. And he had been trying to protect himself ever since by keeping everyone at a distance, including me, especially me. I was not a threat to his daughter. I was a threat to his grief. Because if I stayed, if I was permanent, then maybe the world was not as temporary as he believed. And that idea scared him more than losing anyone ever could. Robert called me the next day. He asked me to meet him alone. No Elena, no Frank, just the two of us. I said yes because I did not know how to say no to a man who had been carrying a dead child for 40 years. We sat in a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booze and coffee that had been sitting too long. He ordered black. He did not look at me. He stared at the sugar dispenser like it was the most important thing in the room. He said his name was Michael. He was 8 years old. He was driving Michael to soccer practice on a Tuesday afternoon. A truck ran a red light. He saw it coming. He said he could see the driver's face. A young guy, 17 maybe, looking down at his phone. He said he had time to think. That was the worst part. He had time to think about what was about to happen, and he could not do anything to stop it. Michael died in his arms, in the driver's seat of a car that should have been safe. His son died in his arms, and he lived. After that, he said he could not look at children without seeing Michael's face. He could not look at his wife without seeing her grief and knowing he had caused it. He could not look at Elena without wondering if he would lose her too. So he stopped looking. He stopped getting close. He stopped hoping. He said hope was a trap. Hope made you believe things could be okay, and then life showed you they could not. He had learned that lesson in the worst way possible, and he was not going to learn it again. When Elena brought me home, he saw the way she looked at me, the same way she used to look at her mother before he ruined everything. He thought I would leave, or I would die, or she would leave me. Something would happen. Something always happens. I asked what if nothing happens. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. He said that is the part he cannot imagine. A world where nothing terrible happens. A world where people stay. A world where hope is not a trap, but a promise. He could not imagine it because he had never lived it. I sat across from him in that diner, and I realized I was not just asking him to accept me. I was asking him to believe in something he had lost the ability to believe in. Permanence. Safety. Love that does not end in a car crash. I did not know if I could teach him that. I did not know if anyone could, but I was going to try, because he was my wife's father, and because Michael died in his arms, and he had been dying a little every day since. Someone needed to tell him it was okay to stop. I told Elena about the conversation. I told her everything. The diner, the coffee, the way her father stared at the sugar dispenser like it was the only thing keeping him in his seat. I told her about Michael, about the truck, about the 17-year-old looking down at his phone. She cried. She said he has never talked about Michael. Not with her. Not with her mother. Not with anyone. I said he talked to me. She asked why. I said because I'm not his family. It is easier to tell strangers the truth. Strangers do not look at you differently after they know. Strangers do not carry your grief with them. Strangers can hear the worst thing you have ever done and walk away without it changing who they are to you. I was a stranger to Robert. That was why he could finally speak. Elena asked what I was going to do. I said I was going to stay. That was the only thing that mattered. Not what he said about me. Not what he called me when he thought I was not listening. Just that I stayed. She asked if I could forgive him. I said I did not need to forgive him. Not yet. I needed to understand him. Forgiveness comes later. Or not. That was not the goal. The goal was to stop being a stranger. To stop being temporary. To become someone he could not dismiss because I had already proven I was not going anywhere. I started showing up. Not to prove anything. Not to earn his approval. Just to be there. I helped Robert in his garden on Saturday mornings. I did not know anything about tomatoes, but I learned. I sat with him while he watched the news. We did not talk much. He would grumble about politics. I would nod. That was enough. I did not push. I did not ask about Michael again. I just stayed. That was my answer to temporary. Not words. Presence. Showing up week after week until he could not imagine the garden without me. Until he could not imagine the news without someone to grumble to. Until I was not a stranger anymore, but something closer to family. That was the only way I knew how to fight a 40-year-old wound. Not with confrontation. With consistency. Not with speeches. with silence and a shovel and the willingness to keep showing up even when he tried to push me away. He had been pushing people away for 4 decades. Someone needed to show him what it looked like when someone refused to go. 6 months after the diner, Robert introduced me to someone, a friend of his from work, a man named Carl who had known Robert for 30 years. They were standing in the driveway when I pulled up. I got out of the car and walked over. Robert said, "This is my son-in-law. He's a good man. Not temporary. Not Elena's husband. Not that guy she married. My son-in-law." He said it like it was easy, like he had not spent years withholding those words, like he had not called me temporary behind my back, like I had always belonged. After Carl left, I asked Robert why he changed his mind. He looked at me for a second. Then he said he did not change his mind. He changed his behavior. There was a difference. I asked what made him change his behavior. He said I stayed, even when he was cruel, even when he called me temporary, even when he gave me every reason to pack up and leave and never come back. I stayed. I kept showing up to the garden. I kept sitting through the news. I kept being present even when he tried to push me away. That was what changed him. Not my words, not my arguments, just my refusal to leave. I said I was not going anywhere. He nodded. He said he knew. He said that was what terrified him. He had spent 40 years believing everyone would eventually leave. That was the lesson Michael's death had taught him. People go. You cannot hold on to them. But I had stayed, and that gave him something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. He said the word like it was foreign in his mouth, like he was trying on for size. Elena was watching from the kitchen window. She was crying. I did not cry, but I understood. This was not about me being good enough. It was never about me being good enough. It was about Robert being brave enough to believe that something could last, that not every car runs a red light, that not every son dies at 8 years old, that sometimes people stay. He had been waiting 40 years for someone to prove him wrong. I was not special. I was just the one who did not leave. And that was enough. That was everything. Robert and I are not close. That is not how this works. He still drinks whiskey alone in his study. He still watches the news without talking. He still has the same walls up that he built 40 years ago. But he does not look past me anymore. He looks at me. When I speak, his eyes land on my face. He hears me. That is something. Elena says it is everything. I'm not sure, but I'm grateful. Grateful for a man who has been drowning for 4 decades and finally reached for something solid. Frank told me later that Robert had been saving Michael's room for 40 years. Nothing changed. The same bed with the same Star Wars sheets. The same toys on the same shelf. The same clothes hanging in the same closet. A museum to a boy who never grew up. I asked if Robert still went in there. Frank said every night, before bed, he sits in the dark. He does not turn on the light. He just sits in Michael's room in the dark and remembers. That is the grief. It does not go away. It does not heal. It just makes room for other things. And Robert had not let it make room for anything in a very long time. Until me. Until Elena. Until someone stayed long enough to remind him that living was not a betrayal of the dead. I asked Robert once if he wanted to talk about Michael again. It was a Sunday afternoon. We were in the garden. I was pulling weeds. He was pruning tomatoes. He said no. I said okay. I did not push. Some doors stay closed. That is not my job to open. My job is to stay, to show up, to not be temporary, to keep pulling weeds on Saturday mornings, even when he does not say thank you, to keep sitting through the news, even when he does not ask me to. That is the only promise I can make. He knows that now. He knows I'm not going anywhere. And I think that is enough for both of us. Not forgiveness, not understanding, just presence. Just a man in a garden with his son-in-law, pulling weeds in silence. Both of them learning that some things do not need to be said to be real. I think about the dinner sometimes. The word temporary, how it landed in my chest like a stone, how I carried it for months, turning it over in my hands, wondering what I had done wrong. I thought it was about me. It was not. It was about a man who watched his son die in his arms and never learned how to love anyone without waiting for them to disappear. He was not calling me temporary. He was confessing his own fear, that everything he touched would eventually be taken from him. I just happened to be standing in the way. Robert and I had dinner last week. Just us. Elena was working late. He made steak. He burned it. The kitchen smelled like smoke for an hour. I did not care. We talked about the garden, about the tomatoes that would not grow, about the weather, about nothing important. At the end of the night, he walked me to the door. He said, "Thank you for coming." I said, "Thank you for cooking." He almost smiled. Almost. That was the first time I had seen anything close to happiness on his face. It was not much, but it was more than I had ever gotten before. I do not know if Robert will ever say he was wrong to call me temporary. I do not need him to. I know who I am. I am a man who married his daughter. The man who stayed when staying was hard. The man who heard the worst thing someone could say and did not run. That is not temporary. That is the opposite. I have proven it to myself. That is what matters. Not his approval. Not his apology. Just the knowledge that I did not become the person he expected me to become. I did not leave. I did not prove him right. I stayed. And staying changed everything. Elena is pregnant. We are having a boy. We have not told Robert yet. I do not know how he will react. A grandson. Another boy. Another chance to love someone he could lose. I hope he sees it as a gift. A second chance to be present. To be soft. To let himself believe that permanence is possible. But that is his choice. I cannot make it for him. My choice is to stay. To show up. To be there for Elena and for our son and for whatever version of Robert is left when the fear finally releases its grip. That is not temporary. That is forever. Finally, am over at where silence ends. Have you ever discovered that someone's cruelty toward you is never about you at all, but about a wound they could not name?